For leaving my husband after my mother-in-law locked me inside for 3 days? The deadbolt on our Upper East Side apartment turned with a dry, deliberate click. I stood still in the foyer. My mother-in-law, Catherine's, heels clicked down the grand staircase. "Catherine," I called out weakly. Silence. The door was now secured with the double lock. A knot of ice formed in my stomach. Nathaniel, my husband, was in San Francisco for a deposition. "Take care of her, Mom," he had told her before leaving. She had nodded with that perfect, polished smile of hers. In the living room, every cushion was fluffed, every magazine perfectly aligned on the coffee table. Too perfect. I heard voices in the marbled hallway. The neighbor from 3B, Meredith and Catherine. "Poor Nathaniel, always working so hard," Meredith said, her voice dripping with sympathy. "Someone has to maintain standards," Catherine replied, her voice as sweet as honeyed poison. "Sometimes you have to take certain measures for him to see the results. He'll learn to value a well-run home when he sees it." The words froze the blood in my veins. I was the lesson. I was the message for Nathaniel. I waited, holding my breath. Then I crept upstairs to our bedroom. The door was ajar. Catherine had her back to me. She was emptying my nightstand, my iPhone, the iPad, everything. She stacked it all on the dresser with a calm, methodical air. Then she picked up the cordless landline phone from its base. I ducked into the master bathroom. Through the small, frosted window that opened onto the air shaft, I saw her step out into the service alley behind our building. In her gloved hand, my iPhone gleamed. Next to the large green dumpster, she popped out the SIM card. She looked at it for a moment, a tiny chip of my freedom, dropped it into a sewer grate, then tossed the phone into the dumpster with a dull thud. She dusted her hands off and walked back inside as if she had just disposed of some garbage. I slid to the cold tile floor. Locked in with no way to communicate. She was my jailer. I took a deep, shaky breath. Panicking would not help. Nathaniel would be back in 3 days. I had to be docile, patient. She would lower her guard. I went down to the kitchen. Catherine was stirring a pot of what smelled like chicken broth. "Smells wonderful," I said, my voice soft. She turned. Her sharp blue eyes scanned me, searching for fear, for rebellion. I showed her only submission. "It's for Nathaniel. He likes it when he gets back from a trip. You'll have an early dinner. I'll bring something to your room. You look tired." "Whatever you say." "Thank you." She nodded, a flicker of satisfaction in her eyes. That night, I ate a bland vegetable soup in the guest room. I heard the television from the living room, the hollow sound of a sitcom laugh track. Then the final, definitive click of the main deadbolt, followed by the lock on her own bedroom door across the hall. My prison was secure. I stared at the ceiling. Rage was a luxury I could not afford. Now there was only cold observation. What did she mean by take measures and the results? Nathaniel rarely spoke of his past. Just one name mentioned once in passing. Maya. "That was a long time ago," he had said, his jaw tight, before quickly changing the subject. Outside, the lights of Manhattan twinkled, a galaxy of free people. Inside, there was only the suffocating silence, the scent of lemon-scented cleaning products, and my mother-in-law's smile. Her voice echoed in my head. For him to see the results. I closed my eyes. I was not a prisoner. I was a message. And when Nathaniel read it, it would not say what Catherine expected. The second day dawned with the same oppressive silence. Catherine left a cup of coffee and a piece of dry toast for me in the kitchen. We ate without speaking. She was flipping through a ridiculously expensive home decor catalog. "Today the bathrooms need a deep cleaning," she said, not looking up. "The products are under the sink." I nodded. It was a tactic. Keep me busy, physically exhausted, with no time to think, no energy to protest. I scrubbed the subway tiles until they gleamed. As I worked, my mind raced. The door was impossible, the windows were barred for security, but the building was old. A pre-war co-op, extravagantly renovated but with an old skeleton. I remembered something. When we first moved in 2 years ago, a leak in the guest bathroom ceiling required a plumber. He had opened a small panel in the drywall above the shower to access a pipe. He had mentioned an old ventilation shaft, partially sealed, that connected to the other bathrooms on our line. He fixed the leak and screwed the drywall panel back into place. It's not easily accessible, he had said, but he had not said it was impossible. That afternoon, while Catherine was at her book club meeting, an outing of exactly 2 hours as punctual as a Swiss watch, I locked myself in the guest bathroom. It was the smallest one with no exterior window. Perfect. Using a bobby pin from my hair, I carefully worked at the edges of the painted-over drywall panel. A dark, dusty opening appeared. I stuck my head inside. It smelled of damp plaster and old wiring. A few inches away, I could see the square opening of a ventilation duct covered with a rusty metal grate. It was held in place by 4 old, partially rusted screws. I needed something stronger. I searched a junk drawer in the vanity. I found a small flathead screwdriver, the kind used for the battery compartments of toys. Not ideal, but it might work. I went back to the opening with the screwdriver and the bobby pin. The first screw screeched in protest but turned. The tip of the screwdriver kept slipping. I cut my finger. I cursed under my breath. The second screw came loose more easily. The third one too. The head of the fourth was so rusted it disintegrated under the pressure. I pushed the grate hard. The bent, creaking metal gave way just enough to create a gap. I took a deep breath and squeezed through the opening. The duct was narrow, filled with decades of dust and cobwebs. I crawled forward a few feet. The duct widened into a small chamber where it joined a larger vertical shaft. There, tucked in a corner, was a dust-covered lump, an old shoebox. I dragged it toward me. The lid was faded. I opened it. Inside were a worn, black-covered journal and several photographs. The photos were of a younger Nathaniel in college. He was smiling, his arm around a girl with very dark, wild hair. She was laughing, hanging on his arm. Maya. With trembling hands, I opened the journal. It was an old planner from nearly 10 years ago. Tucked between pages of class notes and reminders were loose sheets of paper. Notes written in Nathaniel's cramped, intense handwriting. Mom says Maya isn't our kind of people, that she's argumentative, that she doesn't respect the family. Maya questions everything. Why do we live here? Why do I have to ask permission to go out? She says Mom controls me. What if she's right? Huge fight. Maya wants us to rent an apartment in Brooklyn. Says we need our own life. Mom overheard. She went pale, said, "No one is leaving this family. This is a family home. Maya has threatened to leave me. She says this is a cage." Mom told me, "A woman who doesn't obey destroys. You know what needs to be done for the good of everyone." The next entry, dated a week later, was written compulsively, the pen strokes tearing through the paper. Accident. Taconic State Parkway, mile marker 72. Too fast, they said. Sharp curve. She was not wearing her seatbelt. They said it on the news. Oh God. Oh God. And below that, a single sentence underlined twice with ink so heavy it nearly broke the paper. Never again. One must obey. For your own good. For the good of the family. The air in the cramped duct felt thin, unbreathable. It was not an accident. It was a lesson. And Nathaniel knew it. He had written it himself. The hand holding the journal trembled. Maya had not just been a problem. She had been pruned. I put the journal back in the box and pushed it back into the corner. I could not take it with me. Catherine would notice its absence if she ever checked up here. But I had seen it. I knew. I climbed back out of the opening, covered in a fine gray dust. I cleaned myself up as best I could. I replaced the twisted grate. The drywall panel went back into place. I washed my hands, my face. Blood pounded in my temples. That night, Catherine was especially kind. She brought dinner to my room, a plate of lentils and a glass of water. "You seem nervous, dear," she said in a syrupy voice. "Not sleeping well. This will help you rest." She placed a small white pill next to the glass. "It's very mild, a gentle tranquilizer I sometimes take. It will calm your nerves." Her smile did not reach her eyes. It was not a suggestion, it was a test or something worse. I remembered the journal. For the good of everyone. "Thank you, Catherine. You're very thoughtful." I picked up the pill, brought the glass to my lips, and made a show of swallowing, bringing my hand to my mouth. I coughed lightly. Oh, it went down the wrong way. She watched me motionless. I dabbed my lips with the napkin, letting the damp, half-dissolved pill fall into my clenched fist. There. All better. Thank you so much. She continued to stare at me for a few more seconds, then nodded, seemingly satisfied. Rest well. Tomorrow is another day. She collected the tray and left. I heard the click of the key locking my room from the outside. I waited. I heard her footsteps retreat. Only then did I open my hand. The sticky, half-dissolved pill lay in my palm. I wrapped it in a tissue and hid it under the mattress. It was not mild. It was a message like the deadbolt, like the SIM card in the sewer. It was an escalation. First the confinement, then the isolation, and after that, what? An accident? An accidental overdose of tranquilizers? I lay down on the bed fully clothed, staring into the darkness. I no longer felt fear. I felt a cold, crystalline rage. Nathaniel was coming back tomorrow, but I was no longer the same person. I had read the script, and I had no intention of playing my part. Catherine wanted him to see the results of my obedience, but the results he would see would be very different. I had to get out. I had to find out more. I had to talk to someone. But who? The old building creaked in its silence. The black journal burned in my memory. For the good of the family. And in the alley below, the trash of my old life decomposed alongside my SIM card. Tomorrow. Tomorrow would be the third day. The night was long. I did not take the pill, but fear kept me awake. Every creak of the building was an omen. At dawn I heard Catherine moving about. I waited for her to go down to the kitchen. Then I left my room. The door was no longer locked from the outside, a small relief. Perhaps she believed the pill had rendered me submissive and drowsy. I showered, washing away the last of the dust from the ventilation duct. As I came out of the bathroom I heard her voice. She was speaking in a low tone, but not low enough. It was coming from Nathaniel's study, the door ajar. I approached silently, my back pressed against the wall. "No, Susan, no," Catherine was saying. She was on a video call with her sister, Aunt Susan, who lived in Palm Beach. "She just needs a small corrective. Nathaniel is too soft with her. Just like he was with the other one." There was a pause. I heard the clink of her spoon against a porcelain teacup. "Yes, I know, but this one is different. She's more internal, does not make a fuss. That's more dangerous. She bottles everything up." Another pause. Her voice dropped even lower. "I've already taken measures. Nathaniel will see the change when he gets back tonight. If it's not enough, well, you know. There are ways. Like with Maya's thing. A domestic accident is so sad and so common." My blood ran cold. It was not a suspicion. It was a cold, calculated confession between sips of tea. Yes, of course. A slip in the bathtub or too many pills for her nerves. Such a shame. I could almost see her smile. Nathaniel will suffer, but in the end, he'll understand. It's for the good of the family, for his stability. He cannot go around choosing women who do not know their place. First that argumentative Maya, and now this one, this silent statue. No, we will not fail this time. She hung up. I felt a sudden wave of dizziness. This was not just confinement, it was a potential death sentence. Nathaniel was coming back tonight, and by then I was supposed to be corrected. Or in the bathtub, or full of pills. I could not wait. I had to get out. Now, the original plan, wait, be docile, let her lower her guard, was a death trap. Catherine was not looking for temporary submission. She was looking for total surrender or my elimination. I waited to hear her go downstairs. I ran to the guest bathroom, removed the panel and squeezed back into the duct. Faster this time. I did not stop at the journal box. I crawled through the main shaft in the opposite direction of the chamber. I knew from the old blueprints I had seen during our renovation that the main ventilation duct ran vertically down the building's core, passing through each floor. Our building only had 4 stories, we were on the 3rd. The duct grew narrower. The metal edges scratched my arms. I kept going down, feeling the vertical shaft descend. At the level of the 2nd floor I saw an exit grate. Pushed it. It was fastened from the outside, but it was old and rusted. With all my strength I kicked the bottom corner with the heel of my shoe. Once, twice, 3 times. With a metallic shriek one screw popped. Then another. The grate swung open like a small rusty door. I emerged into a tiny bathroom filled with paint cans, canvases, and the acrid smell of turpentine. It was not a functioning bathroom, it was a storage closet. I stepped out into a narrow hallway lined with stacked paintings. At the end, a half-open door let out the sound of a classical music station and an old man's whistling. "Isabel, is that you?" A gruff male voice called from the other room. "Did you bring more titanium white?" I froze. There was no going back. I straightened my sweater and walked toward the door. It opened into a huge studio, lit by a large north-facing window. An old man in a paint-splattered smock stood with his back to me, in front of a massive canvas. He had messy white hair. It was Walter, the widowed painter from the second floor, a solitary man who was said to have been a big deal in his day but now drank more than he should. "Excuse me," I said, my voice hoarse. The man spun around, startled. His cloudy blue eyes looked at me in surprise. "Good Lord, where did you come from? Are you an angel that fell out of my ventilation shaft?" "I'm Amelia from the apartment upstairs. Nathaniel's wife." His expression shifted from surprise to deep caution. "Ah." He put down his brush. "The new one. I need help." "I can see that. And you smell like a ventilation duct." He came closer, studying me. "Catherine does not know you're here, does she?" "No. And she cannot find out. Please." He sighed. He went to a small sink and poured some whiskey into a dirty glass. "Drink. Your hands are shaking." I drank. The liquid burned my chest but calmed the trembling. "I cannot go back up there," I said, the words tumbling out. She locked me in. She talked about an accident like with Maya. At the mention of the name, Walter went still. His face darkened. "Do not say that name in here," he said, almost in a whisper. "You knew her." Of course I knew her. His gaze drifted to a corner of the studio, where a large canvas was covered with a drop cloth. She was a girl with fire in her. Too much fire for that family. He walked over to the covered canvas and pulled off the cloth. It was a nearly finished portrait. A young woman with dark hair and large, defiant eyes wearing a sad smile. Maya. It was her, the girl from the photos, but more alive, more real. The painting showed her in half profile, looking at something outside the frame with a mixture of longing and resignation. "She came to see me," Walter confessed, his eyes still on the painting. "Years ago. One day, just like you, she showed up at my door crying. Said she felt trapped, that Catherine was suffocating her. That Nathaniel loved her but would never stand up to his mother. She wanted help. A place to hide for a few days. I told her I could not get involved in their family drama." He lowered his head. "The next day, I read about the accident on the Taconic Parkway in the newspaper. The air seemed to leave the room. You do not think it was an accident, do you?" I said, not as a question. Walter looked at me. His old eyes filled with a deep, ancient pain. Maya was afraid of many things, but not of driving. She was a careful driver, very careful. He paused. "The day she came to see me, she told me something. If anything happens to me, it was not an accident. It was the family. I thought it was just youthful drama. Resentment until I saw Catherine at the funeral. She was not crying, she was smiling. A small, victorious smile. That's when I knew." He pointed to the painting. "That's why I paint her. So I do not forget. So someone remembers she existed, and that she was afraid." I looked at the portrait. Maya's eyes seemed to follow me. "It was not an accident." Catherine's words echoed. "Like with Maya's thing." "I have to go to the police," I said, feeling a surge of determination. Walter shook his head slowly. "And tell them what? That your mother-in-law locked you up for 3 days and talked on the phone? Without proof, it's your word against theirs. Catherine is a respected woman in this building, she has connections. Nathaniel is a model's son. You're the new wife, the unstable one. The one who needs pills for her nerves." He looked at me intently. That is what it was. She had prepared the ground. My supposed instability would be the perfect alibi for an accident or an overdose. "What do I do then?" I asked, my voice small and lost. Walter sighed. "You have to go back." "I cannot." "You have to," he insisted, his voice suddenly harsh. "Nathaniel gets back tonight. It's your only chance. If you're not there, it will be your confession of guilt." She ran away. She was upset. She did something drastic. But if you're there with him present, she cannot do anything. Not immediately. Buy yourself time. Look for proof. Real, hard proof. He was right. It was a trap, but it was the only possible way out. Go back. Face them with Nathaniel there. Thank you, I murmured. Do not thank me. Just be more careful than Maya was. He came over and placed something in my hand. It was a small antique letter opener with a mother-of-pearl handle. It's old, but it's sharp. Hide this. Not to attack, but to open things. Old locks, drawers. I took it. Felt heavier than it looked. Now go. Through the door. Take the service stairs. No one will see you. And pray Catherine has not noticed you're gone. I nodded. As I left, I took one last look at the studio. Walter was already back at his canvas, at Maya's sad eyes. It was as if I had never been there. I climbed the service stairs, my heart hammering against my ribs. I pushed open the door to our floor's landing. It was empty. I breathed a sigh of relief. Maybe, just maybe. I opened the door to our apartment with my key. Catherine had taken the one from my keychain, but I had an old copy hidden in my wallet. I entered silently. Everything was in its place. Perhaps she was in her room. I closed the door without a sound, and then a voice as cold as marble spoke from behind me. Where in the hell have you been, Amelia? I spun around. Catherine was standing in the doorway of the living room. She was wearing an immaculate white apron. In her hands, she held the heavy silver frame of Nathaniel's law school graduation photo. Her sugar-sweet smile had vanished. Her face held only an absolute, icy fury. The silver frame gleamed under the foyer light like a weapon. Catherine did not ask again. Her gaze, two chips of granite, swept over me from head to toe, registering the dust on my jeans, the disarray of my hair, the smudge of paint on my sleeve that I had not noticed. She saw it all and she understood. I asked where you have been, she repeated, each word a cold, sharp blade. I needed some air, I said, trying to keep my voice from breaking. Walter's letter opener felt like a lead weight in my jacket pocket. Air. She let out a short, dry laugh that held no amusement. There is plenty of air in my home. What you have a surplus of is arrogance and disobedience. She took a step toward me. I clutched the doorknob behind my back as if it could save me. I have been locked in for 3 days. Anyone would need to get out. You are not just anyone, she snapped, her voice losing its last trace of civility. You are my son's wife, and you live under my roof. My rules. And I told you to stay in the house. I'm not a dog, Catherine. The sentence slipped out before I could stop it, loaded with all my accumulated rage and fear. Her eyes widened as if I had slapped her. Then they narrowed. Her expression twisted into something dangerous, calculating. No. Dogs are loyal. You're just a problem. Like the other one was. She raised the photo frame slightly. Nathaniel will be here in a few hours, and he will find a house in order and a submissive wife. Or he will find what's left of a wife who unfortunately had a nervous breakdown and fell down the service stairs. Do you understand me, Amelia? The threat was blatant, obscene in its simplicity. The same one she had whispered to her sister. The bathtub, the pills, the stairs. She had it all planned. He will not believe you, I said, but my voice sounded weak, unconvincing even to myself. Oh, he will believe what his mother tells him. He always has. Trust me, after the grief will come the relief. Relief that the problem solved itself. Like last time. Like last time. Walter's words. Maya's look in the painting. Everything coalesced into a torrent of pure terror and fury. I know about Maya, I blurted out, and I saw an almost imperceptible spasm cross her jaw. I know it was not an accident. The silence that followed was thick, absolute. The air seemed to be sucked out of the room. Catherine's mask cracked for a fraction of a second, revealing something hard, ancient, and merciless beneath. Then she composed herself, colder than ever. You have no idea what you're talking about. You're delusional. Those pills have affected your mind, you poor thing. Nathaniel wrote it, I continued desperately, taking a step forward. In an old journal. He said you told him something had to be done for the good of the family. And it was for the good of the family. What she did was not an accident. Shut up. The shout was not loud, but it was sharp as a whip. Her composure shattered completely. She advanced on me, the photo frame held high like an object of rage. Not quite a weapon, but the intent was there. Do not say that name in my house. That girl was destroying my son, filling his head with filth. She wanted to take him from here, away from his family, from everything we have built. She was a disease. She was a person. I yelled, tears of rage blurring my vision. And you had her removed. I saved my son, she roared. And then in a sudden blind movement of fury, she hurled the photo frame against the wall, right next to my head. The glass shattered with a brutal crash, an explosion of tiny diamonds that rained down on the marble floor. The silver frame dented with a dull thud. The photo of Nathaniel, smiling in his cap and gown, was trapped beneath the shards. The sound seemed to hit Catherine physically. She took a staggering step back, panting, staring at the wreckage as if she did not understand how it got there. Her anger vanished in an instant, replaced by a pale horror. She looked at the broken glass, then at the damaged photo of her son, and then at her own hands as if she did not recognize them. No, she murmured, her voice just a broken whisper. No, no, no. She brought her hands to her head, tangling her fingers in her perfectly coiffed hair. Her breathing became ragged, shallow. She was not looking at me. She was looking at the photo as if it were a sacred object she had just desecrated. I'm sorry, Nathaniel, I'm sorry, she babbled, addressing the picture. Then her gaze landed on me. But there was no fury now, only a deep primal fear, that of a cornered animal. This is your fault, she whispered hoarsely. You bring ruin. Like her. Like all of them. And then she turned, nearly tripping on the glass fragments. She ran, not walked, down the hall to her bedroom. I heard the scrape of the key turning in the lock from the inside. Then a soft thud, as if she had slumped against the door. I was left alone in the foyer, trembling, surrounded by broken glass and the sudden terrifying silence. My heart pounded against my ribs. Catherine's anger had frightened me, but her panic was new, and it was infinitely more dangerous. Why had breaking Nathaniel's photo made her react like that? It was not just sentimental value, it was something more. A broken taboo, a shattered spell. I approached the debris. Carefully, I moved aside the largest shards of glass. I pulled out the photo. The glass had scratched it on one edge, right over Nathaniel's smile. Underneath, the cardboard backing of the frame was torn in a corner. Something white was peeking through the tear. It was not normal cardboard. It was a very thin, folded piece of paper, hidden between the photo and the backing. With fingers that still trembled, I pulled it out. It was old yellow paper. A medical form. A letterhead at the top. The Westbrook Clinic. Confidential. It was not Nathaniel's. It was his sister's, Lila's. Nathaniel almost never talked about her. She lived on the West Coast, he said, very far away. There was a photo of a younger her in the living room, a girl with a shy smile. My eyes scanned the form. The words leaped out at me like venomous spiders. Name, Lila Sterling. Age 17. Procedure, voluntary termination of pregnancy. Date, May 15, 2010. Signature of legal guardian, Catherine Sterling. And below, in the observations section, a handwritten note in a doctor's cramped script. Patient presents strong opposition. Proceeding with maternal consent. Risk of future complications noted. The air caught in my throat. Lila was only 17. Catherine had forced her. Risk of future complications. Infertility. That explained why she lived very far away. Why she never visited. I heard a muffled sob from Catherine's room. Then silence again. I looked at the paper in my hands. Then at Catherine's closed door. Then at the broken glass on the floor. It was not just Nathaniel's journal. It was not just Maya. There was an older secret, one that had broken another daughter. And Catherine would rather lock herself away, break things, or perhaps make them disappear than face it. Nathaniel would arrive in a few hours and I had this. A weapon. A piece of the truth. I folded it carefully and put it in the inner pocket of my sweater, next to Walter's letter opener. First I would clean up the glass. Then I would prepare dinner as if nothing had happened, like the submissive wife. And I would wait. But I was no longer waiting for my husband. I was waiting for an accomplice. And now, for the first time, I had something to confront him with. I cleaned up the glass. Each fragment I picked up tinkled like a tiny alarm. I wrapped them in newspaper and buried them at the bottom of the kitchen trash, under coffee grounds and vegetable peels. I placed Nathaniel's scratched photo on the console table, frameless. A damaged icon. Then I went to the kitchen. I put water on to boil for pasta, stirred the sauce. My actions were automatic. My mind, however, was a silent whirlwind. The folded paper in my pocket burned like a hot coal against my skin. The sound of the key in the front door at 9 o'clock sharp made me jump. I took a deep breath. I smiled for no one. I smiled for the battle ahead. "Honey, I'm home." Nathaniel's voice sounded tired but cheerful. The sound of his rolling suitcase on the marble floor. He appeared in the kitchen doorway. Blue suit slightly wrinkled. His smile was wide, genuine, until his eyes met mine. He was looking for something. The change his mother had promised. "Hi, darling," I said, and went to kiss his cheek. He smelled like recycled airplane air and hotel soap. "Hello, Amelia. Everything all right?" His gaze went past me, toward the empty living room. "And Mom?" "In her room. I think she has a headache," I replied, turning back to the stove. "Oh, poor thing." His tone was one of genuine concern. Then he noticed the console table. "Hey, what happened to my graduation picture frame?" "An accident," I said without turning, stirring the sauce. "It slipped from my hands while I was dusting. I'm so sorry." I cleaned up all the glass. There was a long silence. "It's okay," he finally said, but his voice had lost some of its warmth. "These things happen." He went to the refrigerator, poured himself a glass of water. I watched him out of the corner of my eye. His tense shoulders, the way he avoided looking at me directly. Guilt? Or just travel fatigue? "And you? How were the last few days?" he asked, taking a long drink. "Quiet," I lied sweetly. "Your mother has been very attentive." "I'm glad. She only wants what's best. You know that." "What's best?" The phrase echoed hollowly. I strained the pasta. Dinner proceeded with a horrifying normality. Catherine did not leave her room. The two of us ate in silence, broken only by the clinking of silverware and Nathaniel's banal comments about his meetings in San Francisco. Every bite stuck in my throat. "Not hungry?" he asked, gesturing to my nearly full plate. "Just a little tired, that's all. Mom mentioned you have been a bit on edge lately." There it was. The first move. "Did she?" I asked, looking up from my plate. "What else did she tell you?" He shrugged, visibly uncomfortable. "That you were a bit upset, that you were having a hard time adjusting to me being away." "Nothing serious." "Nothing serious," I repeated, savoring the bitter irony. "Right. Just being locked in, having my phone taken, and being offered tranquilizers that I did not take. Unimportant things." Nathaniel put down his fork. His face went rigid. "What are you talking about, Amelia?" "The truth, Nathaniel. That your mother locked me in this apartment, that she threw my SIM card down a sewer grate, that last night she tried to drug me with a tranquilizer. Is that nothing serious to you?" He turned pale. It was not the reaction of a surprised man. It was the reaction of a man whose carefully constructed script had just been set on fire. "Do not be ridiculous. Mom is just a little overprotective sometimes. If she locked you in, it must have been for your own good. Maybe she thought you were unstable and was afraid you would do something reckless." "For my own good." The same words from the journal. The same family mantra. Like what? Going for a walk? Making a phone call? Are those reckless things? My voice rose despite myself. Or like asking about Maya, for example? Would that be reckless too? The name fell between us like a grenade. Nathaniel froze. His breathing stopped. What little color was left in his face drained away completely. His eyes, a warm brown that suddenly seemed very dark, locked onto mine with something akin to panic. What are you talking about?" he whispered. "About Maya. Your girlfriend. The one who had an accident on the Taconic Parkway." I leaned forward slightly, placing my hands on the table. "The one who, according to your mother, was destroying my son. The one who had to be removed, for the good of the family." "Shut up," he shouted, jumping to his feet. The chair screeched against the floor. His fist slammed the table, making the plates jump. You have no right to talk about that. You do not know anything. I had retrieved the black journal from its hiding place after returning from Walter's studio. I tossed it onto the table. It landed with a dull thud next to his plate. And I do not know anything about this either? Nathaniel stared at the journal as if it were a venomous snake. He recognized the cover instantly. A tremor ran through his hands. He reached out, took it, and opened it to a random page. His eyes flew over his own handwriting from a decade ago. He read and something inside him broke. All his anger deflated, leaving only a vast, weary terror. Where did you find this? He asked without looking up. It does not matter. What matters is what is written in it. You knew it was not an accident. I did not know anything, he yelled, but it was a desperate, powerless shout. They were just thoughts, fears. Mom said it was for the best, that Maya was unstable, that she would hurt us all. I just wanted to protect my family. Your family. My laugh was bitter, shrill. What about her, Nathaniel? What about Maya? What had she done besides want to live her life, and yours, away from here? You do not understand, he bellowed, and suddenly, with a brusque gesture, he flung his arm out. He knocked over his wine glass. The thin crystal flew through the air and shattered against the white plaster wall. The red wine splattered like blood. The glass broke into pieces on the floor, its crash echoing the sound of the broken photograph from hours before. A grotesque mirror. We both stood paralyzed, staring at the spreading red stain. The silence was absolute, broken only by Nathaniel's ragged breathing. I'm sorry, he murmured, looking at the mess. I did not mean to. Yes, you did, I said with glacial calm. You wanted me to shut up. Like always. He did not answer. He lowered his head, picked up the journal, and clutched it to his chest as if it were a shield. He left the kitchen without looking back. I heard his heavy footsteps going up the stairs. Then the door to his study, our study though I hardly ever went in, slammed shut. I stood there looking at the wine stain. It was almost pretty, a splash of chaos in the pristine perfection. I cleaned it up. I picked up the glass shards just as I had hours before, just as I was apparently expected to do in this house. Clean up everyone else's messes. The night wore on, the house thick with a tense, angry silence. Catherine did not come out. Nathaniel did not come down. I lay down in the guest bed, fully dressed, waiting. Walter's letter opener was cold under my pillow. A sound woke me. A metallic click followed by a faint creak. I sat up in bed. It was 3 a.m. The sound was coming from the hallway. I slipped out of bed and opened the door a crack. A line of light shone from under the study door. And a smell. It was not the smell of old books or paper. It was an acrid Swedish smell. The smell of something burning. I opened the door wider. The hallway was dark. I crept forward barefoot, making no sound. The study door was ajar. I peeked inside. Nathaniel had his back to me, kneeling in front of the small decorative electric fireplace we never used. He had removed the front grate. Inside, low orange flames licked at a pile of papers. He was feeding them in one by one, watching as they curled, blackened, and turned to ash. His face, in the flickering light, was empty, ashen. On the floor beside him was a cardboard box. I recognized it. It was the box where he kept old papers from college, things he said he would organize someday. But what he was burning now was not old notes. Among the pages turning to smoke, I saw the blue letterhead of a police precinct, a case number, the word report. And for an instant before the flames devoured it, I read a name, Maya Vance. He was burning the police report from the accident. He took another paper, a photocopy of a medical report. I saw a hospital logo, a diagram of a car. He threw it into the fire. The flames grew, suddenly illuminating a corner of the room. There in the wastebasket, not everything had burned completely. A charred but still legible piece of paper had flown out. It was the corner of a report. A few typewritten lines remained. Eyewitness states that the vehicle was traveling at excessive speed and made an abrupt lane change before leaving the road, with no signs of braking. Ms. Vance was not wearing a seat belt. And below that, A handwritten note in a script I recognized from the thank you notes Catherine sent out. Final report. Accident due to loss of control. File. Catherine's handwriting. Nathaniel did not see it. He was absorbed in his task of destruction. He put in another stack of papers. These did not burn as easily. They were thicker on glossy paper. They were photographs. The photos of Maya. The ones that had been in the box in the ventilation duct. He was burning them too. The flames grew higher, more voracious, illuminating his profile with a sinister glow. I took a silent step back. My heart was pounding in my throat. This was not just passive guilt. It was active complicity. He was destroying evidence. Now, because I had mentioned Maya, because I had brought out the journal, because I had unearthed the truth. The message was clear. The past must remain buried at any cost. And I, with my questions, was becoming part of that past that needed to be eliminated. I slipped back to my room, closed the door and leaned against it. The ash from the report seemed to have coated my throat. Nathaniel did not just know. He was actively protecting the secret, protecting his mother, protecting the family. But now I had another piece, a different, older secret. One that perhaps even Nathaniel did not fully know. I took Lila's medical report from my pocket. I touched it in the darkness. I did not just have to talk to him. I had to talk to her. I had to find Lila. And for that, I needed a phone or an escape or a miracle. Outside in the study, the smell of burning paper began to seep under my door. It was the smell of truth turned to smoke. And it was the smell of my time running out. The phone rang so many times I almost hung up. Finally, a female voice, raspy with sleep, answered. Hello. Is this Lila? Lila Sterling. I asked, gripping the receiver of the old kitchen landline. I had found a spare cord in a junk drawer and after a few minutes of fumbling, managed to get a dial tone. It was my only window. Catherine was asleep upstairs, likely under the effects of her own pills. Her heavy breathing was audible from her bedroom. Yes. Who is this? The voice was wary but not hostile. Young, or at least younger than Nathaniel. My name is Amelia. I'm your brother Nathaniel's wife. A heavy silence. Then a sigh. Oh, her. She did not say my sister-in-law. She said, her. What do you want? Did Mom put you up to spying on me? Your mother has me locked in her apartment in New York, I said without preamble. Another silence, shorter this time. Sounds about right. So why are you calling me? You want me to come rescue you? I'm in Portland for a reason, and I do not get involved in her games. It's not a game, Lila. I found something. An old medical report. From a place called the Westbrook Clinic. Dated 12 years ago. A procedure. I took a deep breath. It has your name on it. The silence on the other end of the line thickened until it was tangible. I heard a nearly choked gasp. Where is it? Her voice was a thread. In my house. Hidden in a picture frame. It was her, was it not? Catherine. A strange sound, somewhere between a bitter laugh and a sob, came through the line. I'm 29 now. I was 17 then. I was scared. The boy was out of the picture. I told Mom. I thought she would help me. She paused, swallowing hard. She took me to that clinic. It was not a real clinic. It was a back room in some office building. She said I could not dishonor the family, that a baby would ruin Nathaniel's future, the golden boy, that she knew what was best, that I would suffer, but I would thank her later. Lila's voice broke. There was an infection. Complications. I can never have children. That was my lesson. Obedience. The market left was infertility. I'm so sorry, Lila. I'm so sorry. Why? You did not do anything. You're just the latest one in her golden cage. Why are you really calling me? Because there's more. Before me there was someone else. Maya. The name fell like a stone. I heard Lila hold her breath. We do not talk about her, she said, almost a whisper. What happened to her, Lila? She was Nathaniel's girlfriend before Mom approved of you. Or rather, before Mom decided to get rid of her. She could not control Maya. She was too independent. And Nathaniel was crazy about her. Her voice trembled. Mom started with her usual tactics, little things, until one day there was a huge fight. Maya left the apartment screaming that she was going to the police about something. The next day, the accident. Nathaniel fell apart. Mom said she was a disgrace, that God had punished her for being rebellious. And Nathaniel started listening to Mom, obeying, just like me. The police about what? I do not know. But after the accident, Mom and Nathaniel were very quiet, very nervous. They burned a lot of papers in the fireplace. I saw it from my room. Her voice hardened. I've told you everything. Do not call me again. I do not want to know anything about that house or her. Lila, wait. The dial tone buzzed in my ear. I had scared her, or perhaps awakened a pain too deep to touch. I hung up, trembling. The pieces were starting to fit together, forming a hideous, monstrous picture. Catherine, pruning the branches of her family tree. Lila, rendered barren. Maya, silenced by an accident. A noise from upstairs. A dull thud, then a low moan. I dropped the phone, ran up the stairs 2 at a time. The door to Catherine's bedroom was ajar. Inside I found her. She was on the floor next to the bed. Her face, always so composed, was contorted in a mask of agony. One hand clutched her chest, the other reached for the nightstand, where a bottle of pills lay overturned. Her eyes, filled with a primal panic, locked onto mine. Heart, she managed to say in a threat of a voice. For an instant, just an instant, I stood frozen. The woman who had imprisoned me, who had ruined her daughter's life, who had orchestrated Maya's end, lay helpless. I could close the door. Walk away. It would be so easy. A heart attack, so sad, they would say. But her eyes were not begging for help. They reflected terror and, strangely, an urgent need to speak. I rushed to her side, grabbed the bottle, nitroglycerin, and put a pill under her tongue. I grabbed the cell phone peeking out of her pocket and dialed 911. I gave the address. As I spoke to the operator, she grabbed my wrist. Her strength was surprising. I leaned in close. Her bluish lips moved. The words came out haltingly between gasps. Do not let him. Repeat my. Repeat what, Catherine? Mistakes. Her eyes filled with tears. With Lila. Such a big mistake. She should not go through the same thing. Her gaze clouded, searching for something in my face. The papers. Nathaniel. Burning. What papers, Catherine? Maya's. A stronger spasm shook her. She nodded almost imperceptibly. The report. She went to the police. That night, Nathaniel found her. He. A cough choked her. Her grip loosened. The footsteps of the paramedics were already echoing on the stairs. What did Nathaniel do, Catherine? I urged, pressing my ear to her lips. Her last breath, a hoarse whisper, hit me like a physical blow. He followed her. And the car did not brake. Her eyes went glassy, fixed on the ceiling. The pressure on my wrist disappeared. I stayed there, kneeling on the floor of her perfect bedroom, listening to the commotion as the paramedics entered, pushing me aside. Her confession, poisoned and too late, hung in the air. It was not just her. It was Nathaniel. Nathaniel had been there. He had burned the police report, and the car did not brake. They took her out on a stretcher. It was all a blur. Routine questions. I answered on autopilot. Yes, my mother-in-law. Yes, a history of heart problems. Yes, I found her like this. When they left, the silence returned. Denser, heavier. I looked toward Nathaniel's study. The electric fireplace was clean, but it smelled of burning, of burnt truth. I went to the desk. In the wastebasket, only cold ashes and a few charred fragments of paper. I picked one up with my fingertips. On one edge, barely legible, were a few typewritten letters. .ort for teacher. And a half-melted official stamp. Next to another fragment, a nearly erased signature. Maya V. It was not an accident. Or if it was a deliberate one. And Nathaniel knew. He had covered it up. Catherine had orchestrated it. And he, her obedient son, had cleaned up the mess. Lila had been his private lesson. Maya the public one. And I was the lesson in progress. The doorbell startled me. I looked at the clock. It could not be the paramedics again. I went to the intercom. The screen showed Nathaniel's pale, haggard face. He was supposed to be in San Francisco. His eyes through the static searched for mine. He did not look like a worried husband. He looked like a scared man. I glanced down the empty hall where, minutes before, they had taken his mother's body, then back at the screen. I pressed the button to buzz him in. The sound hummed like a lament. My hands were stained with ash, and in my mouth was the bitter taste of a truth I could no longer swallow. The buzz of the entryway echoed like a gunshot in the silent apartment. I wiped my ash-stained hands on my pants. The smell of burnt paper seemed stuck to my skin, my hair, every breath I took. I heard his footsteps on the stairs, fast and heavy. Not the calm rhythm of someone coming home. It was the march of someone running from something or toward a battle. I opened the door before he could knock. Nathaniel stood on the other side with a small suitcase. His dark trench coat soaked from a rain I had not even noticed was falling. His face, normally serene, was pale with deep dark circles under his eyes. His eyes, the same ones that had told me "I love you" on a beach in the Hamptons, immediately scanned me, darting from my face to my hands, to the empty hallway behind me. "Amelia." His voice was hoarse, forced. "Are you okay? I got a strange call from the hospital. They said something about Mom, that she had been admitted. What happened?" "Your mother had a heart attack, Nathaniel," I said, keeping my voice flat, stepping aside to let him in. "She did not make it." He came in, dropping his suitcase on the floor. He did not touch me. He did not try to hug me. His gaze swept the foyer like an animal sniffing for danger. "How did it happen? Where were you?" "Locked in. Where she had me. As you probably already know." I let the words fall one by one, watching his reaction. A shadow crossed his face. Denial, fear, guilt. He ran a hand through his hair. "I do not know what you're talking about. Mom. She just wanted to take care of you. You have been very upset these last few days." "Upset from asking about Maya?" I let the name hang in the charged air. Nathaniel froze. All remaining color drained from his face. What are you saying about Maya?" he murmured. His gaze shifted involuntarily toward the study door. "Your mother talked, Nathaniel, before the end, about the police report, about the car that did not break, about the papers you burned in the fireplace." I nodded toward the study. My legs were trembling, but my voice remained steady, cold, as if it belonged to someone else. He blinked fast. Then the panic, the calculation. Then something inside him broke. The mask of the concerned husband, the respectful son, flaked away like old plaster. His expression hardened, emptied of everything but a cold, ancient rage. "You do not know anything," he spat, and his voice was no longer Nathaniel's. It was lower, rougher, full of venom. "You should not have interfered. You should not have dug around. You could have had a good life. All you had to do was be obedient. The way a wife should be." I took a step back. I had never seen him like this, not even in our worst arguments. "Did you do something to Maya, Nathaniel?" The question came out directly. "A knife." He let out a short, humorless laugh. "She brought it on herself. With her rebellion, her filthy mouth, going to the police with lies. What was I supposed to do? Let her destroy my family? My mother?" He took a step closer. I took another step back, until my back hit the cold wall of the foyer. I only followed her to talk, to make her see reason. But she drove off. She was driving like a maniac. I tried to keep up, but the rain. The road was wet. It was an accident. A tragic accident. His eyes shone with a fanatical light. And Mom was right. Sometimes an accident is necessary. It prunes the rotten branch. After that, I understood. I understood the need for order. The order that cost your sister a child and her fertility. I snapped, feeling nausea rise in my throat. His face contorted. That was different. Lila was weak. She let herself get led astray. Mom saved her from a life of misery. She taught her a lesson. A hard one, but a necessary one. And you. His gaze swept over me with contempt. You were heading down the same path. Questioning, doubting, disobeying. That is why Mom acted. To protect you. To protect us. By locking me up? Stealing my phone? Trying to drug me? I screamed, fury overcoming fear. Yes. If it was necessary. Look where your curiosity has gotten you. Accusing me. judging me. He lunged forward, grabbing my arms forcefully. His grip was like iron. His breath smelled of coffee and fear. You are going to shut up, Amelia. You are going to forget all of this. Mom is gone. A tragedy. You have been deeply affected, you're in shock. No one will believe you. And if you try anything. His voice dropped to a sinister whisper. Who is going to believe a hysterical woman against a respected man grieving his recently deceased mother? Huh. I struggled to get free, but it was useless. Let me go, Nathaniel. No. Not until you understand. Not until you obey. He started dragging me. Not toward the rooms, but toward the front door. We're going somewhere. A place where you can calm down, where we can talk. Without interference. Where? Let go of me. I struggled. I screamed. I beat his chest with my clenched fists. He barely flinched. He pulled something from his pocket. A handkerchief. Before I could react, he pressed it over my nose and mouth. A sweet chemical smell flooded my senses. The world started to tilt, to blur. His arms went around me, feigning an embrace for anyone who might see from the stairs. I heard his distant voice saying, "Easy, darling, it's all over. Let's go home." Then darkness. The rattling of the car woke me. I was lying on the back seat, my hands tied in front of me with a rough rope. A dull ache throbbed in my temples. Outside, through the dirty window, I could only see dark trees and rain. We had left the city. Nathaniel drove in silence. The profile of his face, lit by the dashboard, looked like a stone mask. Where are we going? I managed to say, my mouth pasty. To the family cabin. Upstate. Where no one will bother us. Where you can think clearly. I remembered the place, an old, isolated cabin he had inherited from his grandfather. We had used it a couple of times in the summer. It had always seemed gloomy to me. More than an hour passed. The car left the paved road for a dirt track. Finally, it stopped in front of the dark silhouette of the house. There were no lights from any other dwellings in sight. Nathaniel pulled me out of the car without any gentleness. The front door creaked open. A smell of dust, damp, and stale air greeted us. He dragged me inside and lit a gas lamp that cast dancing shadows on the stone walls. Here. You'll be safe from yourself here. From your ideas, he said, pushing me toward an old, cracked leather sofa. He untied my hands. Do not try to run. There is no one for miles. He pulled my own iPhone from his trench coat, the one Catherine had thrown away. He must have retrieved it. He turned it on briefly, showing the home screen before putting it away again. No SIM card, of course. Just like Mom said. It's for the best. You're a monster, I whispered, rubbing my wrists. I am the one who maintains order, he suddenly roared, slamming his fist on the wooden table. The lamp swayed and the shadows leaped like demons. The order she taught. You need guidance. Firmness. Maya did not understand. Lila did not learn. But you, Amelia. You are going to learn. Here. You are going to learn to obey. His delusion chilled my blood. He was not just an accomplice. He was a true believer. He had absorbed Catherine's poison until it was part of his very being. And what are you going to do, Nathaniel? Lock me up here forever? Or prune me like Maya? I challenged, standing up though my legs wanted to give way. He stood still, breathing heavily. Then a crooked smile appeared on his lips. Not forever. Just until your mind is clear. Until you ask for forgiveness. Until you accept your place. Mom always said that isolation and reflection are good teachers. He went to a shelf and poured himself a long drink from a bottle of whiskey. Now you're going to stay here. Quietly. I'm going to get some firewood. It's cold. He left, closing the heavy wooden door behind him. I heard the sound of a key turning in the lock. I was locked in again, but this time in a much more dangerous cage. I looked around desperately. The main room with its cold fireplace, old furniture covered with sheets. Then I remembered the cellar. There was a small root cellar, with a trapdoor in the kitchen floor. Nathaniel had never let me go down there. Just old junk and damp, he would say. If he was going to lock me up, maybe I could hide there by some time, find something to defend myself with. I slipped into the adjoining kitchen. The wooden trapdoor was there with an iron ring. I pulled on it. It was heavy, but it gave way with a creak. A stone staircase descended into absolute darkness. A smell of earth, mold, and something else, acrid, rose from below. I went down carefully, step by step. When I set foot on the dirt floor, the darkness enveloped me. I moved forward tentatively, my arms outstretched. My hands touched a cold, damp wall, then some wooden shelves. The smell was getting stronger. A smell of confinement, of despair. And then I heard a sound. A faint moan, almost a whisper, coming from a corner. I froze. Who is there? I asked, my voice trembling. A metallic noise, a shuffling, then a broken, dry, barely human voice. Amelia? Is that you? I recognized that voice. Even though it was shattered by fear and weakness, I recognized it. It was Lila's voice, the voice I had heard on the phone from Portland just hours before. Lila! I cried, stumbling toward the sound. My feet tripped on a dirty blanket. My hands found a form huddled on the floor. A cold metal chain attached to a shackle on her ankle, bolted to the wall. I turned on my phone screen, useless without a network to use as a flashlight. The faint blue glow illuminated the scene. Lila lay in a corner, wrapped in rags, filthy, emaciated. Her eyes, huge in her sunken face, looked at me with a mixture of hope and absolute terror. The rusted iron shackle cut into her ankle. Next to her were an empty plastic bowl and a bottle of water. "You're not in Portland," I whispered, dropping to my knees beside her, tears burning my eyes. "You never left." She shook her head weakly. "He brought me here months ago. When I started asking questions about Mom, about missing family money, he said my mind was sick, that I needed a retreat to heal." A dirty tear traced a path down her cheek. "Help me, please, before he comes back." Upstairs, the front door creaked open. Nathaniel's heavy footsteps echoed on the floor above. "Amelia? Where are you? I have started the fire. It's time for us to talk." The creak of the door upstairs was like a gunshot in the cellar's stillness. Nathaniel's footsteps echoed above our heads, heavy, deliberate. "Amelia? Where are you? The fire's ready. It's time to talk." His voice, thick with a restrained fury, dripped through the floorboards. Lila flinched beside me, her icy hand gripping my arm with desperate strength. "Shoo!" I whispered, turning off the phone screen. The darkness enveloped us again, dense and protective. I had forgotten to close the trapdoor. His footsteps moved from the main living area. He paused. He must have been looking at the empty sofa. "Amelia." This time his tone was sharper. Alert. "Do not make this difficult. There is nowhere to hide." We heard his footsteps approaching the kitchen. My heart was pounding so hard I was afraid he would hear it. Lila buried her face against my shoulder, holding her breath. The light from the gas lamp flooded the kitchen, casting the square silhouette of the open trapdoor on the stone floor. Nathaniel's shadow loomed over it. "Ah," he said, and the word sounded almost satisfied. "I thought you might remember this place. Let's all go down, then. We can have a family chat." His voice was a venomous thread. The wooden stairs creaked under his weight. He was coming down slowly, the lamp in one hand. His grotesque, elongated shadow descended the cellar wall first. There was no time, no place to run. My hands, fumbling on the cold ground, found something cold and sharp. A piece of the broken chain, a shard of rusted iron that had broken off near where it was anchored to the wall. I grabbed it. The jagged edge cut my palm. The lamplight filled the cellar, blinding us. Nathaniel stood at the foot of the stairs, his figure silhouetted against the light. His gaze moved from me, crouched on the floor, to Lila, huddled beside me. A hideous, perverse grin of triumph twisted his lips. "Well, look at this. The two lost sheep together. How touching." He took a step inside, setting the lamp on the bottom step. "Mom would say this is fate. 2 lessons in a single day." "Let us go, Nathaniel," I said, getting to my feet. My voice did not tremble. I held the piece of iron hidden behind my back, the blood from my cut warm and slick. "Go." He let out a dry chuckle. "Go where? To tell your lies to the police? No. This is where you're going to learn. Learn that family comes first. That order must be maintained." He pulled a roll of silver duct tape from his trench coat pocket. "Mom was always right. Words are not enough." He advanced toward Lila first. She let out a choked whimper, scrambling backward, but the chain stopped her. "Do not touch her," I shouted, stepping between them. He looked at me with disdain. "Do not give orders, Amelia. You're next." He reached out a hand to push me aside. That is when I moved. With all the strength I had left, I threw the piece of iron at his face. It was not a weapon, it was a distraction. He instinctively raised an arm to protect himself. The jagged iron grazed his forehead, opening a shallow cut. He grunted, more surprised than hurt. But that split second was all I needed. I did not run. I lunged forward toward him. My hand went for his wrist. I grabbed it with both hands and, using his own momentum, twisted his arm behind his back. It was a clumsy, desperate move I had learned in a self-defense class a lifetime ago. He roared with pain and rage, his other fist clenching to hit me. I dodged the blow by inches, and instead of letting go, I bit his hand with all my might. The taste of blood, sweat, and fear filled my mouth. He screamed, dropping the duct tape. In that moment of chaos, my fingers fumbled in his trench coat pocket and found what I was looking for: the rectangular shape of my iPhone. I tore it from his pocket. He howled, and his free hand grabbed my hair, yanking me backward with brutal force. The pain was blinding, but I had the phone. With my thumb, I pressed the side button rapidly, once, twice, 3 times. The emergency SOS signal, the one that called 911 even without a SIM card, had to activate. I hoped. I prayed. He threw me to the ground. The impact knocked the wind out of me. I watched, blurry-eyed, as he brought his bleeding hand to his mouth, his bloodshot eyes fixed on me. Then he turned and kicked the phone. It flew from my hand and skittered into a dark corner, the screen shattering. "Your last hope," he roared. He pounced on me, his hands going for my throat. The world shrank to his weight, his fingers tightening, the smell of whiskey and hate. Dark spots danced before my eyes. In the distance, I heard Lila's faint cry. I could not breathe. Then, a new sound cut through the ringing in my ears. It was not from the house. It was from outside. Faint at first, then growing clearer. Sharp, insistent sirens slicing through the mountain night. Nathaniel's fingers loosened a millimeter. His head turned toward the trapdoor. His eyes widened in disbelief. How? The phone was broken. No one knew we were here. It was the second I needed. With a final desperate effort, I brought up my knee and drove it with all my force into his groin. He gasped. The pressure on my neck vanished. I scrambled backward, coughing, gulping painful mouthfuls of air. The sirens were right outside now. Red and blue lights flashed, reflecting in the small, dirty cellar windows at ground level. Car doors slammed. Voices. "Police! Down here!" I screamed, my voice raw and broken. "In the cellar!" Nathaniel, still doubled over in pain, looked toward the stairs, then at me, then at Lila. His eyes held nothing but pure panic now, the panic of a cornered animal. With a grunt, he lunged for the stairs, trying to escape. But it was too late. Heavy boots were already thudding in the kitchen above. An imposing figure, the silhouette of a state trooper, blocked the light from the trapdoor, a powerful flashlight blinding Nathaniel. "Stop! Police! Nobody move!" Nathaniel froze, paralyzed like a child caught doing something wrong. The flashlight beam lit him up, then me on the floor, then Lila, chained in the corner. The trooper's expression, hard and professional, morphed into a mask of pure horror. Everything after that was a fast-moving, controlled chaos. More officers came down. They cuffed a struggling Nathaniel as he screamed about conspiracies and family order. They wrapped me in a thermal blanket. A female trooper, her face serious but her eyes kind, knelt beside Lila and called for an ambulance. An officer collected the rusted, blood-stained piece of iron with tongs. Another, wearing gloves, picked up my shattered iPhone. "We received an emergency alert from this device," the first trooper explained as he helped me up the stairs, my legs shaking. "Weak signal, but enough to triangulate the area." Then we heard screams. "That woman is Lila Sterling. She has been missing for months." "Yes," I coughed, clutching the blanket. "And he is my husband, Nathaniel Sterling. His mother, Catherine, died today. He was involved in the death of his ex-girlfriend, Maya Vance. There was a police report. He burned it." "Easy, ma'am. You're safe now. You can tell us everything." Outside, the cold mountain air hit my face. The blue lights spun, painting the pine trees an unreal color. I watched them lead a bent, head-bowed Nathaniel into a patrol car. He did not look at me. Then they brought Lila out on a stretcher. Her eyes found mine through the crowd of uniforms, and for the first time, I saw something that was not fear. It was a small, fragile glimmer of relief. 3 months later, a fine rain fell over Woodlawn Cemetery, forming puddles on the gravel paths. A handful of people in black stood around the new headstone of Catherine Sterling. Death by natural causes, the report said. A family tragedy, acquaintances murmured. I stood a little apart, wearing a simple black dress. I was not crying. I watched Aunt Susan, Catherine's sister, dabbing her eyes with a black handkerchief. As the small group began to disperse, Susan approached me. Her face, so similar to Catherine's but softer, was etched with worried lines. Amelia, she said, her voice low. Thank you for coming. I know things were not easy. No, I replied simply. She nodded, looking toward the grave. Then she reached into her handbag and pulled out a small, time-yellowed envelope. She gave me this years ago. Said to give it to you if anything ever happened. She held the envelope out to me. Her hand was trembling slightly. I think now is the time. I took it. Inside was not a letter, just a worn black and white photograph. A young woman, maybe 19 or 20, looked at the camera with a shy smile. It was Catherine, a version of her I did not know, with eyes full of life and hope. But on her cheek, even in the faded photo, a dark bruise was visible, a mark shaped like a thumbprint near her temple. On the back, a single word, written in a shaky hand in faded ink. Flee. I looked at it, then at Susan. She lowered her eyes in shame. Our Father, she began, and she did not need to finish. A cycle. A poison passed from one generation to the next, from victim to executioner. Catherine had learned the lesson of submission and had turned it into a doctrine, a cage for her children. For me, Nathaniel had absorbed it to the point of madness. Lila and I were to be the next recipients, and Maya the failed warning. I closed my hand around the photo. It was not an excuse. Nothing excused what she had done, but it was an explanation. A sad, terrible explanation. What will you do now? Susan asked, not meeting my eyes. I'm going to Chicago, I said, my voice firmer than I expected. With Lila. She needs a new start. Far away from here. Lila was waiting in the car at the edge of the path. She had gained a little weight, but her gaze was still fragile, flinching at any loud noise. The doctors said the physical recovery would be long, the mental one longer. But she had agreed to come. She had agreed to try. Before I turned to leave, Susan touched my arm. He will be put away for a long time, you know. With what he did to Maya, the evidence they reconstructed from the fire kidnapping Lila, what he did to you, justice will be slow, but it will come. She paused. Mom, did she say anything at the end? About him? I looked at the black marble grave. I remembered her last breath, her poisoned confession. She said she made a mistake, I answered, choosing my words carefully. Too late. She nodded, tears in her eyes again. I turned my back on her and walked toward the car, through the fine rain that was cleaning the air. As I opened the door, Lila smiled at me, a small, brave gesture. On the seat were 2 small suitcases. Everything we owned, everything that mattered. Ready? I asked. Ready, she whispered. The car pulled away, leaving behind the cemetery, the shadows of the cabin in the mountains, and the 2-clean apartment on the Upper East Side. I looked out the back window, the photo of the young, bruised Catherine crumpled in my fist. Then I opened the window and let the rain wet my face. When we were on the highway heading west, I opened my hand. The wind took the old photo, snatching it from my fingers, sending it spinning and disappearing into the rain and the gray road. I did not look back. Did you enjoy this story? Leave a comment and hit the subscribe button to support the channel. More tales are on the way.